Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Open Mic. Today, we have Gilbert Poole on our show. He spent 32 years in a Michigan prison for a murder he absolutely did not commit. He was arrested at just 22 years old, and he lost the best years of his life. Behind bars, he lost both of his parents, his family. He studied the law in hopes of finding a better way out. Then he hooked up with Marla Mitchell Shishan, who you may remember from an episode we did here on Open Mic a few episodes ago. She works at the Western Michigan University Cooley Law School Innocence Project, and she worked tirelessly with lots of interns and students to secure Mr. Poole's release. It didn't happen quickly, but persistence paid off, and now Mr. Poole is a free man, and he joins us today to share with us his unthinkable journey. Welcome to Open Mic, Gilbert Poole.
Thank you, Mike.
The truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. That's what you're going to hear on my podcast, Open Mic. I'm going to tell you things that most lawyers won't tell you. We expose the truth and bring you justice. I want you to go for the win in law and in life.
You want an honest man, but you don't understand. I want to be here when.
It's so nice to be here. And, we interviewed your attorney, and then you sent me a really nice email. Why don't you tell our listeners and viewers, what you thought when you heard that interview and why you thought you wanted to come on the show?
Well, Mike, I heard my attorney explain the legal aspects of the case and how it proceeded from there. But we also touched upon some of the struggles that I had inside trying to be heard. And I think it's important that people realize that I wasn't just sitting in the prison waiting for somebody to come rescue me. I worked tirelessly, filing everything I could, and it probably inhibited the attorney's ability to get me out too, because like Ms. Mitchell alluded to previously, the courts are not interested in re-entertaining claims that's already been presented. So my efforts to get myself out probably inhibited their ability to get me out too, but it preserved a lot of the issues also. So, and I thought it was important to express the struggles that prisoners go through trying to be heard. It's a procedural mess. I mean, if you're not a lawyer, you're not going to get the same consideration.
It's outlandish to that some of these judges won't read every single word and understand what you're going through and read between the lines sometimes and realize that there are lots of innocent people sitting in prison. May of 2021, Oakland County Circuit Judge Ray Lee Chabot set aside your murder conviction. We saw the photos of you coming out of custody, arms raised in victory. What was it like to walk out a free man after 32 years in prison for a crime not only didn't you commit, but you knew you didn't commit, and you said and proclaimed your innocence from day one? Try to describe that feeling.
It was absolutely surreal. I didn't believe it. I knew probably 2 days before that I was going to go before the judge. Choked up. I mean, I didn't know how to act. I'm so far removed from society. I didn't know what to expect. It was just really strange walking out and interacting with people without handcuffs on, no fences around me. I could walk or go wherever I wanted to, and yet I didn't want to go. I didn't want to leave the company of the people that was walking me out. I I was totally dependent upon the people from the Innocence Project and the Conviction Integrity Unit to assist me, because I wouldn't know where to go.
And you went in at age 22, came out around age 55. And I mean, that's a lifetime. I mean, tell us some of the things that happened while you were in prison to your family that you can never get back.
Wow, that's the hardest part. You know, people can be strong and get through trials and tribulations in prison. But it's the mental aspect that really gets to you. When my mother caught cancer and she was given 6 months to live, you can't get that back. You can't be there with her. You can't reach out and hug her. She was 1,000 miles away in Las Vegas. There was absolutely nothing I could do. And you know, I talked to her on the phone as much as I could, but eventually she succumbed to the cancer, and there was no attending the funeral. Just deal with it in the prison, you know. So you kind of have to isolate yourself and not show weakness, or be strong and amongst the other people, So it's right after that, my grandmother, she passed away. That was another blow, and it wasn't long. My father passed away, but by this time I'm numb. It seems like hope is fading. All contact I had with the outside world was gone now. When I came to prison, I didn't attach myself to friends and say, hey, you're going to communicate with me the whole time I'm in here. I have a life without parole. I couldn't expect somebody in the free world to, stay in contact with me with all that time, So, I pretty much cut everybody loose and dealt with it on my own. But when my family passed away, yeah, that's when prison became real to me. Prison was really rough then.
Did you have any siblings growing up?
I had a stepbrother and a stepsister on my father's side that I did not know until after I was incarcerated. So no,
Okay.
not while I was growing up.
Wow. What a lonely feeling that must have been. I'm so sorry you had to deal with that.
Well, I tell you, I found some friends in prison that I kind of attached myself to, and just I hung with them basically exclusively. I had a prison factory job for a while, for more than a decade, but I mainly just it was a veteran that I helped take care of. He was handicapped, so that was my best friend, and eventually he was transferred to another prison. I was transferred to another prison. So, I reevaluated who I was hanging around with, and I came to the church and sought comfort in the church and the outside people coming in from the Seventh-day Adventist Church, and I kind of adopted them as my family. And my legal work that I was doing, I was filing things relentlessly, trying to get out, and I wasn't getting anywhere. Improper wasn't happening. The courts just wouldn't give me the time of day. So I gave up, and I said, I gave it to God. I said, if you want me out, you'll get me out. And eventually things started happening. The Innocent Marlon Mitchell, Sishon, and the Cooley Law School Innocence Project had been relentlessly filing on my behalf. And they went above and beyond what they were signed on to do. Initially, they only did DNA testing.
Yeah.
But
Well, let me ask you before we get into the details of that, and we are going to get into those. And let's not forget that Marla did, go into detail about your defense. But tell me about Gilbert Poole at 22 years old when you were arrested. I mean, what were you up to at that point in your life?
well, Mike, I was a typical young man, I guess. Well, maybe not so typical. I was kind of a rowdy teenager. But I had came to the realization that I had to grow up at some point. So I became a plumber, worked for a plumbing company down in North Carolina. And I had started doing plumber repair work with another plumber, a licensed plumber. I was not licensed, but I started collecting the tools and equipment, to eventually be licensed and do it on my own. So when I came to prison, I lost all that. So,
Tell me.
a young man going to prison,
Mhm.
I kind of, I was taken from North Carolina all the way up to Michigan. So it was really tough trying to establish myself in a place that I didn't know anybody and had no visits. It was kind of rough. Certainly wasn't easy.
No, of course not. So tell me, you had a girlfriend at the time when you were arrested. You had a girlfriend who ends up playing a horrible, pivotal role in all this. What was her name?
Right. At the time, her name was Connie Cook. I don't know what her name is now.
Were you guys living together at the time?
I had met her in Michigan, and we went down to North Carolina when I moved back to North Carolina, and started doing plumbing work. I brought her with her, and as I changed from the young man mindset into trying to establish a life for myself there. She wasn't really on board with settling down. She was still. It didn't end well.
No.
And
your relationship ended.
Right.
And you
I asked her to leave.
Okay.
I asked her to leave, and she went to the police department down there and asked them for a ride back to Michigan. And obviously they don't give rides to Michigan. She said, well, my boyfriend said he'd kill me if I stayed here. Well, that was a lie, but they said, yeah, well, that's a threat, but still, it's not going to get you a ride to Michigan. She says, well, he's killed before, and I believe him. Oh, wait a minute. Now they took interest, they perked up then, and they called Pontiac, Michigan, where she was from. And they had an unsolved murder there. And
that was like 5 or 6 months before this conversation.
You're right.
Okay, so I just want to set the stage because this is a fascinating, horrible story. But 5 or 6 months later, after this murder, you were in Michigan on the date of the murder, and then a few days later were down in North Carolina plumbing, and then she went to the police and said, give me a ride. My boyfriend has killed before. He'll kill me if I don't get out of here. And then keep going with the story.
Well, they contacted the Pontiac police, and they had an unsolved murder in Pontiac. And they came down to North Carolina, and while I was unbeknownst to me, didn't know anything about it at the time, they pulled up to my mobile home that we were staying in and cleaned it out, took everything in there, every stitch of clothing and everything, and brought it back to Michigan and went through it looking for evidence. They didn't find anything because there wasn't anything to find. I thought that the girlfriend had just came back and broke into the mobile home and took everything. So, I said, hey, if that's what she needs, she can have it, I moved to a different apartment. It wasn't until that was on Thanksgiving. It wasn't until Christmas Day or the day after Christmas. I was out doing service calls pretty busy day for a plumber. And the police contacted my office and said they wanted to talk to me. I said, okay, well, I'll meet you there at 5 o'clock. So I showed up at the office and they said, yeah, you're under arrest for a murder in Michigan. What? Okay. This is a joke, right? There's no way. But I said, no, it's real. I said, okay. Well, I told the secretary there, I said, I'll be back. We got to go clear this up. And that was the last time I had feet on free ground.
So 6.5 months later, you're in North Carolina. You get arrested for Robert Mejia. How do you pronounce his last name?
I think it's Mejia.
Mejia's murder. His body was found on a running path in Pontiac in June of 1988. He'd been stabbed, last seen alive at a Pontiac bar. And several bar patrons provided a description of a man that some say looked like you. There was a drawing. It was posted in the Oakland Press. I'm going to try to find that drawing if I can and show it to our viewers. But did that drawing look like you?
No. This is I wasn't worried, even though I waived extradition back to Michigan. I had my mother hire a lawyer over the telephone, just random found somebody. He came to see me in the Oakland County Jail and told me, don't worry about it. They run a composite drawing in the newspaper and showed me a copy of the Oakland Press at the time where the picture ran. Had no resemblance to me. Actually, there were 2 composite drawings in the Oakland Press. Neither one of them even came close to me. And don't worry about it. It's not you. This is an easy case. So I was just waiting on trial. If it only went that way.
Right. So we know how it turned out. We know that, but let's talk about some of this evidence, because there was bite mark evidence that played a pivotal role. Your ex-girlfriend played a pivotal role. Let's talk about the bite mark evidence. So first of all, you've never heard of this person. You never heard of Robert Mejia before, correct?
That's correct.
The bar that people said they saw you in, had you ever been to that bar before?
No.
So anybody who said you were there with him was mistaken or lying.
Right. The way the evidence played out was, they had through discovery, we found out that there was trace evidence left on the body. Mr. Mejia was stabbed to death, but there was blood found on the body that did not belong to him. There were hair samples found on the body, actually dried in the blood, that did not belong to him. There were beer bottles by the body that had fingerprints on them. And there was a bruise on his arm that resembled, it was a circular bruise that resembled a bite mark. They issued a warrant for me for these things. Again, I'm not worried about it. It's not me. Nothing's going to match. And it turns out it did not match. The blood found on the body did not match the victim. It did not match me. The hair, through visual comparison, did not match me. But when they came to trial, they had a forensic odontologist, Dr. Alan J. Warnick, come in and testify. And a forensic odontologist, his profession is identifying corpses from the dental records. So if you have teeth on a body, you can compare that to x-rays and dental records and say, this is the person. Well, he took these techniques of comparison and applied it to skin. And they have done it before, and the Michigan courts had allowed it because you have when you have overlays, tracings of the bite mark and X-rays, you can do a comparison, and the jury can see this. They can see and judge for themselves. The problem is the rules make allowances for the expert to form an opinion and express his personal opinion. So he took his science of comparison, which was by no way conclusive, and attached his personal opinion to it. And his personal opinion was given credibility because of his experience in identifying bodies. So he gets up on the stand and says, in all dental certainty, it was the defendant that bit the victim. The odds of winning the lottery is better. The odds of it not being the defendant that bit the victim was 2.4 billion to 1 or something to that effect. It was absolutely astronomical claims and numbers that he threw out. And a layperson sitting on a jury has been instructed that this person has been stipulated to as an expert. He's an expert odontologist, but he has taken his field of odontology and stretched it super thin and then attached a personal opinion on it that has no basis in science. It's not reproducible. It's not something another person would come up with, these same numbers. So they've allowed this forensic science, which may be a good investigative tool, to be expanded into something that was absolutely junk. And this junk science supported Miss Cook's testimony that said, I told her I did it.
So as you're sitting there listening to this testimony, your head must have been exploding.
Well, I'm sitting beside my attorney. My attorney had a pretty laid back stance in the courtroom. He was sitting back just listening to the trial. Very little cross-examination, or he put on absolutely no defense witnesses whatsoever. He had no answer to anything that was put out. He did question the admissibility of the bite mark identification evidence before trial. He asked for the ability to, I believe it was voir dire, the witness, before it was introduced to the jury for admissibility purposes. But it seemed
the judge allowed it.
Right. It seemed to me like there was a little shuffling going on at the time, and that didn't happen. So instead of establishing his field that he was going to testify to, it was just live testimony. So when the expert was allowed to testify to these astronomical claims, my attorney did say, well, this is not as accurate as a fingerprint comparison, is it? And he says, no. Well, I'm not supposed to make a positive identification from it because it's not, you don't have points of comparison that can be, say you have to have 7 points for a positive match. It's not possible. So the American Board of Forensic Odontology had warned him not to give this testimony. However, in his opinion, and this is where it just went off the rails. So when he gives this opinion, I'm looking at my attorney. I said, "Come on, you can't,
right?
You can't let this go." But there's not a lot. You can't unpour water,
Right. It should have been an automatic mistrial at that point, because you're right. You can't unring a bell, as we say.
Yeah.
And that's why you do a voir dire to see what the witness is going to say before they say it in front of a jury. The judge thought that this person was credible. He stretched and gave his opinion evidence that you did it, and that 2 billion to 1 that it was you. And sitting as a lay person on a jury, and you're right, everybody agrees this guy's an expert. At that point, that's a hard thing to get around. Plus, you have your ex-girlfriend making up lies about you, saying you told her you killed somebody in a park. I mean, It's ridiculous. Let me just point out for our listeners that bite mark comparison evidence since your trial has been debunked by the National Academy of Sciences, the President's Council of Advisors, even the American Society of Odontology no longer stands by the practices used in your case. So it sounds like the scientific community has agreed with you that this evidence should be used, and it's I doubt it's being used as much or as frequently to hurt other people like it was used to hurt you.
Mike, remarkably, prosecutors still try to bring it in based upon bad law. And I say bad law because the law that allowed it in my case was very basic. They said the jury can make comparisons for themselves and allow the testimony in. And it's really, it shouldn't be in there at all, because the jury is not qualified in these sciences to discern which is a stretch or which is absolutely reproducible science.
It's this type of evidence. We've done, I think, about 12 exonerees right now, and in almost every trial, there's a piece of evidence, whether I'm talking to the defense attorney or somebody who eventually got them out, or to the exoneree themselves. There's a piece of evidence at trial that it's so hard to rebut, and your lawyer didn't hire an expert to rebut him, didn't do a very good job cross-examining him, and a jury is left with unimpeachable or unimpeached evidence of an expert's opinion saying you did it. I mean, what were they supposed to do?
Right.
Not believe it because of why? Your lawyer didn't give them a reason to not believe it.
I can't be angry at the jury because, I mean, I'm sitting there keeping score on a pad. I'm marking, well, that was one for our team. Oh, that's one for their team. I quit keeping score at that point. I told my lawyer, I said, I'm sunk. What are you going to do? Who are you going to put on trial? I mean, who are you going to put on the stand to correct this? We got to fight this. I don't know how this happened, but it can't stand like this. And he had no answer. He said, well, I'm pretty much done. I said, well, no. Yeah, at least put me on the stand. Put me on the stand. Somebody has to say I didn't do it, But, a defendant getting on the stand and say, I didn't do it, wasn't me, that didn't carry any weight whatsoever.
I think 11 out of the 12 people we've interviewed did not take the stand in their own defense. I haven't been keeping score, but yeah, you're right. That is and it's probably, I don't do criminal law, but it's that rule that's followed by 98% of defense attorneys is probably there for a reason. But in your case, if you both thought you were going down no matter what did you have to lose? And I know we're playing Monday morning quarterback, and it may not have made a difference, but at least you would have been able to tell your story.
Yeah.
So let's just talk about your girlfriend who lied about what you told her. Where did she get this information about this murder? Did she even know about it, or did she just make it up when she was telling the cops he's killed somebody before? Like, why did she use that? Where did she get that from? Did you ever figure that out?
Well, we were in Pontiac at the time. She got the newspaper, and she's from that area. So whether she knew the person before or it was part of her circle of friends there in Pontiac, I don't know.
Did you and her, when the murder happened, did you guys talk about it?
No.
She didn't say, hey, did you see this guy was killed at the park or anything like that?
No.
And you two never visited that bar before?
No.
So, and she got a lot of information wrong, right? When she was talking to the police and describing what you told her. I mean, some of the facts weren't even right.
Through looking at the transcripts of her initial interviews, after they got her back to Michigan, they started noticing some inconsistencies with the facts of the case. For example, she said that I had killed the guy in January, and the guy was actually killed in June. Well, there's a 6-month difference here. She was going off memory, what she had been told or read, and apparently her memory wasn't too good.
And she testified at trial, I assume?
She did. And when questioned about it, now here's a funny part. They gave her a polygraph test that she failed. And that she worked with the polygraph examiner until she got it right. So the prosecutor got before the judge out of the presence of the jury and cautioned my attorney that he could not question her about why she changed her testimony or why she lied to police, because she knew she had to take a polygraph test. What? And if the attorney opens the door for her taking a polygraph test, then they'll bring in the fact that she took one and passed it. No. So my attorney was not allowed to question her about changing her testimony or why she changed her testimony.
Hey, well, that's outrageous. Yeah. That's the most outrageous thing I think I've heard in a long time. That's just not even accurate in the least bit. And the fact that the Court of Appeals and nobody picked up on that, that's reversible error, in my opinion.
Well, there were a lot of reversible errors. If in hindsight, if you look at the case law in comparison, in my opinion, but obviously I have a 9th grade education. I'm a plumber. I got to learn these things. I got to study the law and figure it out myself. And my presentation to the courts probably was not on the skill level as a licensed attorney, but I think it was readable enough to get the point across. I think it's a major flaw in the system, though, that they don't give. I know there's case law that says that an improper prisoner is supposed to be given leeway, in their pleadings, in the reading of them, but in reality, a lot of the issues that I put forth were either not addressed or just disregarded as harmless. And without being an attorney skilled enough to defend that position, they just become rulings that I can't revisit. So once I get a bad ruling, that's the law of the case now. So you can't go back and relitigate this issue, even when I do get an attorney. So I created a procedural mess for whoever stepped in to help.
Right. But, you can't just sit there and hope somebody's going to come and help. There's so many people there writing these innocent clinics, hundreds and hundreds of people, and they only take a handful of cases.
Right.
Let's talk about the DNA evidence, the blood evidence. So we've already discussed that the blood, the hairs found at the scene didn't match you. The bite mark evidence didn't match you, but the guy said it did match you. And then there was some pebbles that had blood on them that were never tested. Am I getting that right?
They were tested.
Okay.
Here's another questionable, in my opinion, if I'm allowed, procedure in the courtroom. The forensic doctor who did the test initially, that did the hair comparison and the testing of the blood on the body, on the stones that was found on the victim, did a report, and in that report it said that none of it matched me. That was pursuant to the search warrant that they issued.
Right.
However, prior to trial, the prosecutor asked for a substitution in experts because the doctor who did, the forensic scientist who did the initial test, Mr. Woodford, was ill. So he was asking that his assistant, Miss Melinda Jackson, reproduce the test so she can come in and testify to her findings. And the judge allowed it. My attorney stipulated to it. Yeah, okay, didn't defend that position. And what happened was she reproduced the test that the prosecutor was going to use. The hair comparison was not, he was not going to use that because it didn't match me. The blood test on the foreign blood did not match me, so the prosecutor wasn't going to use that.
Mhm.
She did not reproduce that. So therefore, there was no report saying that the blood didn't match me or the hair didn't match me. But we had this initial report. So when my attorney stepped up and said, "What about this blood that didn't match him?" She said, "Well, I didn't do those reports." Well, what about the hair? She says, "Well, I'm not trained in hair comparison. I didn't do that. I mean, I looked at it, but I didn't do those comparisons." So the prosecutor stepped in and told the judge, he says, "Your Honor, I feel like I've deceived the court. I said that Mr. Woodford was not available because he was sick." Well, he really is. And I got him on the phone. If defense counsel would like to talk to him, he can. So they took a break, and my attorney talked to this expert or this forensic scientist on the phone. And they came back and they said, "Well, I've talked to counsel. Counsel was able to talk to the other expert, and there was some questionable evidence that was not reproduced. So in lieu of having him come in, we'll just introduce his report into evidence." Here's a key factor. The prosecutor said, "The report says all the blood that was tested and all the hair that was tested belonged to the victim. There was nothing unusual about the report, but it's in evidence if you'd like to see it." That was a lie, because that evidence excluded me. And counsel allowed it to be entered into the evidence without reading it to the jury, without telling him this doesn't match the defendant. Come on, this was this was my saving grace. How do you not address this?
What?
But that was introduced into the report. The original report was introduced into evidence, but it was never read or never expounded upon for the jury. So when I went to appeal and said this excludes me, the argument became, well, the jury had it. If they could see it if they wanted to, they must have seen it and disregarded it.
And your lawyer just didn't pick up on that, or he was asleep?
Well, no, believe me, I was kicking him under the table, but it just, I don't know.
Is this guy still practicing law all these years later?
No, I don't think he's alive right now. I think he passed away since then. But
that's so maddening, man. That is maddening.
It is surreal. I mean, if you take it from my position, I'm sitting there thinking, I got faith in the American justice system. Don't worry about it. It's going to be all right. You're innocent. Don't worry about it. You're going to get through it. It's just a matter of the process. Okay, fine. And then when everything fails to such a degree, it's like, what? Wow.
Yeah.
Really? I mean, it's just unbelievable to me.
So let's fast forward 30 years or 28 years, 2016, a DNA testing of that same sample and other blood samples confirmed that other than the victim, your blood was nowhere there. This is, 5 years before you were released. Tell us about the 2000. I know there was lots of legal wranglings to get that tested. I know they originally denied it. I know they Supreme Court of Michigan finally said, bullshit, you get to test. And that test was favorable, but that was 5 years ago. So tell us a little bit about that.
This is where that ruling came in. This is where that little play in the courtroom came into play, because they said since the prosecutor entered the report of the original scientist into the evidence that the jury could see, they were already aware that the blood didn't match me. So that became harmless error in light of the bite mark testimony and the girlfriend's testimony saying, I told her I did it. There's other evidence to support my conviction. So therefore, the DNA testing that excludes me, well, the jury already knew it anyway.
So I know that you got,
It's
I know that
circular logic you can't get
yeah, no,
around.
it makes no sense. So I know that we talked about your lawyer. We've interviewed your lawyer. She eventually got the Michigan Attorney General's Conviction Integrity Unit involved. You were their first case, I believe. Attorney General Dana Nessel spearheaded it. But what was the evidence that convinced them that this was all a big mistake?
You know, I want to be clear, Mike. When the ruling that I just described to you was when I introduced this evidence. When I tried to raise these issues, when the law school got involved, now they have to address issues that's already been presented to the court. So then you have to get past this other procedural hurdle. And you know that the standards change. When you're on trial, it's innocent until proven guilty. When you're on appeal, you have to be innocent beyond all reasonable doubt.
I think it's clear and convincing or something crazy.
I mean, yeah, there's a different standard.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not, like I said, by this time I had given up. I did all I could do, and I left it in the hands of counsel. The technical aspects of the DNA testing and the evidence that they came up with, I thank God for it, but I don't really understand every aspect of it.
Okay.
And I would hate to expound upon it, and not have any knowledge of or misstate something. But they did come up with new evidence that opened the case up for re-examination. And opening the case up for re-examination examines everything as a whole once again. And thank God they started a conviction integrity unit, because the conviction integrity unit was able to look beyond the procedural mess that I got myself into and beyond the already litigated part, the res judicata, and actually look at everything and say, wait a minute, how did this happen? This is absolutely ridiculous. They spent an entire year going over every aspect of that case and did not find one thing that tied me to the case other than the theatrics of a courtroom.
We spent some time in the last couple of episodes of Open Mic talking about how wonderful these conviction integrity units are. We learned on the last episode that there are 100 of them in the country out of 6,000 prosecutorial offices. 100. And obviously more are needed. Thank God that we have several in Michigan, including Dana Nessel's office. I read her statement that she came up to you after you were released. Is that true?
Absolutely.
She came right up to you, and what did she say?
Well, she told me she was so sorry that this happened to me, and she asked me if there was anything that I needed or that they could do in their power to help me transition back into society. They would do what they can to help me. She was absolutely sincere, and you could see the tears in her eyes because it wasn't her fault. I don't blame her. I don't blame anybody. I do blame. I can probably find some malice in my heart somewhere, but I can't dwell on what happened in the past. I'm just so glad that these units are popping up all around the country, but they can't do it on their own. It has to be a collaborative effort between the Innocence projects, the conviction integrity units, and even the prosecutors, because even if the conviction integrity unit decided that I was wrongfully convicted, they still have to get the prosecutor to agree to it so that they don't have to go back to trial and retry the case. And that has become an issue in some states, because even though a person has been wrongfully convicted down in Kansas City, Missouri, there's a case where a guy was determined to be innocent of the crime, but yet the prosecutor, for whatever reason, was not convinced and won't let him go, won't stipulate to the release. So it's another fight. And then you have the conviction integrity units are small. They're not really large units. And when you have a massive amounts of applications to sift through, there's probably lots more people that are just sitting in the wings waiting. And we really need to revisit some of these old cases, especially if you have something like the bite mark identification evidence. Just for example, how many cases has that expert testified in, and those people are still in.
We talked about that. I mean, there's probably hundreds that one.
So, how much staff do they need to go through hundreds of cases and say, well, is this conviction still legitimate, or is this something that has just contaminated the whole proceeding to where we got to start anew? And then, so it's a big mess. Probably lots of funding needs to be allocated for this, and somebody needs to be a champion for those inside, because there's a lot of people that don't have a voice, that can't express it adequately to get a review.
Well, thank God.
I was fortunate enough to have the Innocence Project on my case that really believed in it, and Ms. Marla Mitchell and her team. There's been hundreds of lawyers that's been through that law school has seen my case. I could fill a stadium with people that's worked on my case. And I don't know of anybody that said, nah, we should drop this. So the stars really aligned for me. But
you had some angels looking out for you.
Absolutely.
And, it strikes me, Gilbert, 32 years you've been out for not even 3 full months. We're having this conversation not even 3 months after you've been out, and you're not upset. You said you barely could maybe find some malice in your heart. That is such a loving and wonderful thing for you, that you're able to forgive quickly. You're able to try to enjoy your life, try to get some normalcy without all of that hatred, because you know that you're not going to be able to live a happy life, a joyful life, a fulfilled life if you are angry at everybody in the world. And the fact that you're not angry 90 days later is mind-blowing. It's a lesson to me. It's a lesson to us all who get mad at people for doing little things.
Thank you.
And listening to you is just, it's really beautiful.
Well, I can't take credit for that. I can't explain it though. I spent 30 years being angry. It was, I had to give up the anger because it's not my fight anymore. Mm-hmm. It's not about me anymore. I gave up. I was a victim just like the guy that got killed in my case. Fortunately, I get another shot. I get another shot at life, and I can't dwell on the past, but I can leave something behind. And if leaving something behind is helping out any way I can, if it's speaking on the subject or bringing attention to the subjects, or working with the conviction integrity units of the prosecutor's office, or the exonerees, and trying to get other people out that are struggling. That's all I got left. I'm too old to establish a retirement. So I'm not going to go work in a factory. So, hey, it's, you might as well make the best of it, and try to leave a mark here on this planet here.
I love it.
I just have to get past the mental health issues. I'm sorry to say, but you can't spend 30 years in prison and come out a citizen. I still have the residual distrust instilled in my brain from being in prison so long. You don't trust anybody in there. And I brought that with me out here. So I just have to get past this reintegration process, and everything will go a lot smoother. But for now, we're working through it.
Well, I'm happy for you. I'm happy for you, sir. When I read your story, I was overjoyed that justice came late, but it finally came for you. I'm happy that I'm just happy that you're out. I hope that you find peace and happiness and new friends, and I hope you find the mental health that you need. And if you need anything, please let us know here at Open Mic. And if there's anything we can do for you, we would be honored. And I hope that we get to meet one day in person. And do you have any parting words for people listening to this show or watching this show that you'd like them to know?
Put your faith in God and don't give up. I gave up. Unfortunately, I still got out. But keep fighting. Stay in the law books. Keep pursuing every remedy you can. If you're supposed to be out, you'll be out eventually.
Okay. I'm going to leave it on that, Mr. Poole. Again, congratulations. Thank you for coming on Open Mic, and take care of yourself.
Thank you, Mike.
Whew. An emotional one with Gilbert Poole, 32 years in prison for a murder he did not commit. Lots of errors, lots of things went wrong. And you heard it from him. You heard it from him, his own words, his own voice. And that was an intense one. So I thank him for coming on Open Mic. I thank you all for watching and listening, and hopefully you'll be commenting and sharing the episode with your loved ones, because I think there's lots of good messages there. And until next time, we'll see you here back on Open Mic.